When I was 20 years old, I had an abortion. When I found out I was pregnant, I knew that I wanted to focus on my education and my future. So it wasn't a difficult decision for me to terminate the pregnancy, but I was really, really nervous about it. But mostly I was just afraid of telling anyone. I was afraid of anyone finding out that I was having an abortion.
I could not run to my parents because I was raised in a Mexican Catholic household, and even the word of abortion is just terrible to them. So I could not go to them and tell them that their daughter was pregnant at 18.
A lot of stigma surrounding people of faith who have abortions, and I like to stand for that and say that my faith led me to getting my abortion, and it helped me through the entire experience.
And I had really wonderful friends, but I also felt like I couldn't tell them because we were all Christians, and as a member of my faith community, I knew that abortion is something that's very stigmatized within my faith. And I was afraid that that would change how they saw me and how they felt about me. And I felt really isolated because of that.
For the longest time, I was told that God was going to punish me coming from a Catholic household. I don't think that is true. I don't think God works that way. And I think I did what I needed to do for myself.
At the time, I didn't know much about abortion. I didn't know where to get it. I just didn't really know how accessible it would be because I live in the Bible Belt, and all I had ever heard about people who had abortion was very bad things.
With that stigma, I felt that I was wrong for wanting to have an abortion, and I felt alone. I did have a lot of barriers and stigma that I had to face with the judgmental and racist pro-lifers outside of the clinic that I've already been facing because I'm also an escort.
There was a lot of stigmatizing of myself, I guess, because I couldn't find stories like mine. It's easy to make the assumption that there are no stories like mine, which I later found was not true.
When I was going into the clinic, I didn't see anyone that was already previously a parent and having to go through the judicial bypass route. So it was kind of a little bit of an isolating situation, even though I had support, because I thought I was the only one, and I know now that I'm not. And I think it's important for us to educate not only on teens getting abortions, but also teens being moms, and also teens being moms that have abortions.
There's a lot of misconceptions and stigma associated with having 2 or more abortions, and I remember in my head, thinking, well, what am I going to do now? And I decided not to go with Planned Parenthood because I didn't want them to know I had another abortion. So
I have had to experience others putting their own feelings onto my story, and that abortion should be something sad or something that isn't joyous, something that shouldn't be celebrated. I don't feel that way. I love having my abortion. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I don't regret it. I would do it again. And those feelings are something that I'm not willing to let anyone take away from me.
It was interesting because the nurses, when I had went there previously for testing and checkups, they were a lot nicer. And when I went there for my procedure, they weren't nice, and they kind of weren't talking to me, and they kind of just let me go through that alone.
Sat down with the doctor, and they said, I told them that I was ultimately looking for an abortion if that was accessible to me, and they said that they didn't know. The Reproductive Health Equity Act had just passed in Oregon, so there was no abortion restriction in Oregon really anymore. I thought that would be in my favor. I was wrong because stigma still exists and people ultimately didn't want to help me.
Eventually I got my abortion and eventually I got the care that I needed. But I share my story so that people are aware that there are barriers to overcome even if abortion is legal, I didn't have access to my rights, and without access to them, what rights did I really have?
I remember just how much for the first month I really wanted to tell my mother every day. But I was just so scared because I knew that I was going to be met with so much judgment and so much hate. So I kept it to myself.
The stigma surrounding teen abortion made it worse. In a family and a community where abortion is not talked about, it made it harder for me to have someone I could trust.
I sometimes wonder what it would have been like if I had been able to tell my friends, if I had been comfortable telling them, what it would have been like if I had a bigger support system around me, and maybe I wouldn't have carried this stigma and shame with me for so long, and not felt quite as isolated in this experience.
I decided to start sharing my story to reduce the stigma around abortion, and especially in my community as, like I mentioned, a first generation low income Latina woman. There's still a lot of discrimination around abortion. And I tell my story so that others feel less alone.
And I want to share this message with other girls that might be going through what I went through, that might feel alone, that might feel alienated, that might feel like everybody is telling them that what they need to do is wrong, and they feel like they don't have any support.
I'm here to tell all of you young folks that abortion is okay, and if you choose to do it, it's gonna be okay, and there's resources and support out there, and you're not alone.
It is absolutely not okay for us to have to wait to get access to care. You can't make policy assuming that everyone is on an equal playing field. You can't make policy assuming that everyone has access to their rights.
And you live in this black and white world that doesn't make any sense because things aren't black and white. And I wish that I had a space that I felt safe enough to come into at that age, so that females like me, people with uteruses, period, can just feel safe enough to share their story and feel safe enough to know their options and choose what option is best for them, and have the support to support that option, because it's so important to not make any young person feel alone.
It took a village for me to receive abortion services, and without them, it might not have been a reality. And for that reason, I hope that abortion is accessible, safe, and without discrimination for all people.